Good afternoon. It is Monday, July 31st, 2023. This is Jason Horak reporting on the ongoing adventures of the Dodge Daytona electric vehicle. The purpose for today's video is to go over some of the projects that I have been working on in an attempt to get the car ready for EVCON 2023. There's been a lot going on, and I will go through each of the different things just to kind of document it and show people what's up, and perhaps give a little insight on the amount of effort that it takes behind the scenes to make some of these relatively small changes and cleanup efforts work. So let's go ahead and start with this corner of the garage. I had removed the EVNetics Soliton 1 from the vehicle a little while ago in anticipation of a new one coming. This is the new one that I talked about in a previous video that I found on eBay, and a gentleman named John from North Carolina sent it up. And it appears to work as far as I can tell, but I really won't know if it's 100% operational unless I put it in the car and run the motor with it. Drive the car down the road, make sure it doesn't have any weird DSAT problems with the high voltage system, that the contactors engage when they see the high voltage pack, all that kind of good stuff. It's probably fine. It was used in a student build to do a bunch of teaching, basically, so that kids could learn how to do conversions, and that's awesome. So its history is known at this point, and it's hopefully working. But I need to test it, and so the way I'm going to test it is by installing it in my car instead of my other controller that I already know works. So that way I can put it through its paces, and we'll know definitively one way or the other whether the thing is all good or not. So as part of that, I removed the front rack that actually stores the Soliton 1 in my car and wanted to clean it up. It was all covered in grit and grime and nasty stuff, so it's now all shiny and pretty. And another thing that I did was replaced all of the bolts with stainless steel. This is a project that I'm going through. Everything that I had added to the car that was a non-stainless steel bolt is getting replaced with stainless steel because I'm just tired of dealing with rust, and it's generally a miserable experience working on a car that's covered in, where all bolts are rusted up. So along that line, these are the original bolts that were in the car, holding all of the parts together. This is like the motor mounts. This is the that whole rack, things that held the Soliton to it. Everything was regular steel bolts before. They're all rusted, some more than others, but they're just more difficult to deal with. And I've soaked these in WD-40. I've tried to clean them up, but there's really only so much you can do to get rid of the rust and such on these bolts. So I'm replacing all of them with stainless steel. So I've got a whole bunch of stainless steel bolts in various sizes that match all those over there. And the ones that I couldn't get locally at our hardware store, I ended up ordering from this great online resource that I found called boltdepot.com. So these guys are great. I was amazed. Their website was really easy to use, and all of the things that I ordered came back with these individually packaged and labeled with showing exactly what the bolt is and everything. Really cool, really professional. It took a few days to get to me from Massachusetts, but I liked them so much that I've already ordered new stuff from them. These bolts are from them, these big guys. And I will be doing all of my bolt ordering from them in the future, just because I was so impressed with how easy it was to use their website, and also how well packaged everything was when it showed up. So shout out to Bolt Depot for being just a great service. But anyway, so these bolts here are all set up to remount that rack. So the Soliton rack hooks into the car with 2 bolts on the top, here and here. They go up underneath I'll show you in a minute, but and then these 2 giant bolt holes here are where those huge bolts go straight through the frame and hold this thing in there. Super, super sturdy. So I wanted to get new bolts for that, and that's what these are. So these are all set up to get that mounted, and then these 4 bolts are actually what hold the Soliton to that frame in these spots. So basically here, 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 and here. So anyway, where that goes is underneath the car. And we'll try to get a decent shot of this with the lighting being what it is down here. But it goes up into this cavity right here. And wow, it's so hard to see. But where that is like, this is the front grille of the car where the air intake used to be for the radiator, like kind of right in there. And normally you can see the Soliton in there because it's mounted directly in the airflow. But under here is a fairly big space. And again, it's hard to get a good camera shot of this. I hope this is doing it justice. But like over here is like, you can kind of see the lights up in there, the flip-up headlights and stuff. But yeah, and then there's the mechanism for releasing the hood and all that good stuff. So where that's going to bolt in, as you can see, it has this giant beam right here that's the main frame member of the front of the car. It goes right through that hole right there. And where it bolts on the top is way up there. And you can kind of see where it was dirty and then removed, but that's where the top of that mount bolts in. So anyway, while I was working on this whole thing, I decided to repaint this piece right here. This was all rusty and nasty in the previous video. I have cleaned it. I have gone through a lot of effort to make this look nice, and then painted it with the Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer special stuff that's supposed to be good for that kind of thing. And there's many coats of that on here, and it hopefully will hold up against the rust and you know, not end up looking like that, where it's all rusty and nasty back there. So I do plan to go ahead and do the same procedure on all of those rusty bits in the back, but it's a big job and I may not have time. We will see. Yet another issue, or project going on, is that my Dodge Daytona badges were all coming apart. This like gooey, sticky stuff started coming loose, and it's just kind of left this nasty residue on the back of the car, which I got to figure out how to get ripped off of there. I don't want to use brake cleaner as that will hurt the paint. So I'm going to have been lubing it up with WD-40, which I had read was going to help take that kind of stuff off. And I think you're supposed to use like WD-40 plus a heat gun plus you know, scraping with a plastic tool of some sort that won't hurt the paint. But I haven't managed to figure that out yet. As soon as I can get that all taken apart, then I can get my little badges taped, probably double-sided taped back on properly so they won't be falling off. Well, we're back in this section of the car. You'll note that one of my battery straps has been removed from the rear battery box. It's sitting over there on the side. And the reason for that is to break the circuit of the pack so that the 100 volts or thereabouts that comprises the back battery box and the 4 batteries that are in the mid battery box kind of down underneath those rear seats, are disconnected from making a circuit. That's important because I'm working in the front of the car. I've got the motor pulled out, I've got the Soliton pulled out, and I don't want to have live high voltage leads up there in any manner. So as you can see, the Charger Buddy is just kind of chilling out in here with its shiny new meter rather, and it's ready to be tested with the charger once I get everything put back together, but that's going to be a little while because I've got so many things ripped apart at this particular moment in time, including the driver's seat, which is upside down. Yet another project, one of many, was to clean up the motor mounts and get them working as best as we possibly could. So these are the new motor mounts, well, the old motor mounts, but some repainted, some replaced with the new rubber inserts, that kind of thing, as opposed to the old motor mounts, which looked like that. They were all rusted up, including the one that's on the transmission, which is that kind of funky one right there. So anyway, got the motor mounts all nice and cleaned up, painted with the Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer and then Rust-Oleum Hammer Black, and many layers, many coats, to hopefully try to keep these things from rusting all to pieces again. I also cleaned up the plate, the motor support bracket plate that hooks to the tail shaft of the motor, and those are more or less ready to be reinstalled in the car. So now we'll take a look at the motor and the flywheel, pressure plate, and clutch situation, just to see what's going on there. On the motor itself, and I'm not sure if the camera is going to make it out or not, but we can see that the flywheel has a little bit of a sheen on it. It's a little shiny. And this shininess is supposedly because it got too hot at one point due to friction with some clutch disc. Now, I had originally thought that there was a problem with it, that was actually why I had an issue with the clutch pedal being loose. But when I went and looked at my older videos, particularly, I think it was back in 2015, I had installed the Sachs brand pressure plate and clutch, which is what this is right here, on this flywheel. And, oops, as I drop it, I'm sure that's good for it. But the clutch disc doesn't look too bad, considering all the drag racing and the autocross and 10,000 miles, give or take, on the car. It's, you know, in reasonably good shape. It's a little rusty, got a little surface rust on it, but all the springs seem to be intact, and, you know, it doesn't look too bad to me. I'm no expert, of course, but, and then, you know, the other side also is looking pretty good. And this is the side that interfaces with the flywheel. I'm not sure how the lighting is in here at the moment. It's getting dark, but as far as the pressure plate is concerned, you see how it's bowed out like that on all the fingers. They kind of make like a cone. Originally, in the previous video, I had speculated that maybe it was a problem that they were flat. However, again, upon reviewing an older video, these fingers were nice and flat when it was installed and torqued down, so apparently that's just how it's supposed to be when it's installed. And they only bow out like this when it's not having any pressure on it. But as far as the surface goes, it's a little shiny, but not not too bad. I need to clean off some grease and things on that one. But really, I think the clutch and pressure plate look okay to me. Nothing is visibly broken. And who knows? The big issue was that when we took off the throwout bearing, we broke off that little pin, which is unfortunate because this is a really nice throwout bearing. But whether this was the source of the problem, I really don't know. So I went ahead and purchased, because I didn't know if that particular flywheel being shiny like that was a problem. I bought a new one. So this brand new made in China flywheel is the solid iron one version, as opposed to this guy, which is a aluminum with a steel ring in the middle. So it's much lighter in general and has less inertia than the stock flywheel will have. So I'm not really sure if I want to swap it at this point. I do have it as an option just in case, and I'm leaving it in the plastic bag because I want to keep the oxygen off of it, or the air off of it as much as possible, and hopefully it won't get all rusted just sitting there in the box. I also purchased a brand new pressure plate and clutch. So this is a Perfection brand, Perfection Performance Power. Both of these items, the pressure plate and the flywheel and clutch and the throwout bearing that came in the kit, all this is from Rock Auto. And they got it shipped out to me in a reasonably quick fashion, and they're ready to go. But I got to looking at this clutch, and you see how it doesn't have those little slats in it. It's all like a solid surface, versus the Sachs one, which has these like lines in it, presumably for heat dissipation or something. I don't know. I'm sure it was done for a reason. This one has less springs, or it has more springs, but they're smaller than the Sachs, which only has 4, but it has like another spring inside of each spring, so really it's 8, kinda. So anyway, just differences between the two different things, and this pressure plate is, see if we can set this down without damaging it very carefully. So this pressure plate also has the fingers kind of domed up there on the top, as I would have expected from the other. This does seem like this is a lot wider, like this diameter here, than on the Sachs one. I'll have to do some measurements kind of side by side when I'm not holding the camera, but yeah, so this is an option. I could swap out just the pressure plate and clutch. I could leave the original pressure plate and clutch and flywheel and just swap out the throwout bearing. This is the new throwout bearing that came with this kit. It's got a little different arrangement on the top. It's like kind of recessed in rather than domed out. Maybe that'll make it work better. I don't know. It does have more substantial little fingers that hold onto the clutch fork, though, so that'll be nice, just for being a little more solid there. But yeah, so anyway, I just kind of wanted to go over before I really did anything. I still haven't decided as of this moment whether I'm going to keep the original setup and just put it back in with the new throwout bearing, or if I'm going to swap out everything. I'm kind of at the point where I'm thinking I'll put the original back in just because I'm kind of curious if it'll just work. And if it does, well, we'll call it good enough, and I'll have a spare brand new pressure plate, clutch, and flywheel ready to go should I need it in the future. Okay, as for the motor itself, My uncle and I have been working on trying to clean it up, remove this thick layer of rust and all the paint flaking off on the surface of the iron part in the center, kind of sand down the aluminum parts and make it look as shiny as possible again. And we've repainted the grills, or actually he repainted the grills, with a special Rust-Oleum rust reformer stuff that is, it's black, and I think it'll look really nice as opposed to rusted metal, which is what it looked like before. So yay! So I just kind of kept those sitting on here just to kind of show you the black and how it'll look against the aluminum once it's done, and I'll put it back together. But what was interesting is, while he had taken off the grills, this fell out. So this is the spring mechanism that holds the brush down. So all it is, it sits in there and it gives pressure on the brush to make sure that it makes good contact with the commutator. But this one broke, and the center just falls right out because it's actually busted. So that's unfortunate, and I don't know how long that's been broken. This motor's been in the car since 2015, so any time between then and now could have busted. And so I didn't even notice that there was a problem until my uncle took off the grills to paint them and it fell out. So fortunately, I do have two other motors sitting over here on the floor. And I'm going to go ahead and pull out one of these from one of these two motors, and we'll make it work. Then I can possibly get a new one of these from NetGain, or I'll just ship the broken one with whichever motor, or both motors, when I send them back for refurbishment. And hopefully all will be well, and they'll replace it as part of the process, and it will be great. So that should get me out of the current bind of having a missing part on the motor, but yeah. So anyway, hopefully next time when you see this motor, it will be painted. We've got some red glossy engine paint that's supposed to be good for really extreme temperatures and stuff. And so we'll try that on here after we get this all cleaned up, sanded, cleaned more, and then painted with that stuff. I would put on the Rust-Oleum rust reformer stuff as well, but I'm a little concerned that the temperature, it might get too hot and cause a problem with that. I don't know, I'll have to do some research on that before I make any permanent decisions, but that's where the motor sits as of today. Okay, after going through and reviewing the old videos from 2015 or so, when I previously swapped out things and had the clutch apart, and seeing that the flywheel was discolored just like it is today, I decided I'm going to keep using it. So the aluminum flywheel is still in here. I have now installed the brand new clutch kit that I had gotten from Rock Auto, and it's not fully installed yet. The bolts are not tightened down all the way. It's just kind of finger tight at this point, because I wanted to show, if I can make it out here, how this sort of bows out here for each of these little fingers. And since that's what I suspect happened with the other, or suspected happened with the other pressure plate, and why it suddenly caused the clutch pedal to go slack and cause the problems, I wanted to at least get a shot of this before I tighten those bolts down, using the cross pattern of alternating star pattern type of thing in order to get that all torqued down so that this metal plate meets the flywheel. So the pressure plate should be squeezed up right against, touching the flywheel, and that way it's fully tight and ready to go. So I did put a little bit of that thread locker blue stuff on each of the threads as I put them in, and hopefully that will cause them to hold in good and be all set. So I'm going to go ahead and get those tightened down, and then we'll take a look at what that those fingers are looking like after it's tightened down, but before we do anything else, putting it in the car or putting the pressure or the throwout bearing on it or anything, and we'll see what happens. Fun, fun, fun. Okay, and now we have all of the bolts tightened up to Jason spec. And that is, I use a regular socket set here, and I hold it about like this, so I'm not putting a whole lot of torque on the end. I'm not, levering it out to the end of that thing, and I tighten it as much as I possibly can with the flywheel locked in place with this little piece of metal so that it can't turn, and that causes it to be bottomed out nicely on between this piece and this piece, and yet not strip out the screws or anything. This is an aluminum flywheel, and I'm putting hardened steel bolts into it, so you got to be relatively careful with that so you don't really torque it down too bad. I don't have a torque wrench or anything fancy, so that's what I do. Anyway, just wanted to show about where this is. You can see that there is no space between the flywheel in here. It's nice and tightened up against that, and those bolts aren't tightening any further. All of the pins are through like they are normally, and it's just it's as tight as it's going to get. So I wanted to point out the little fingers here and how they're not as bowed out as they were when it wasn't attached. I never noticed that before, that as you tighten it in, they get more flat, but there they go. So not completely flat, but they are definitely in there quite a bit more than when the pressure plate is not attached to anything. So anyway, found that interesting. Figured I would document it just in case for future reference, and there we go.